Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe. Today we have Miss Chrissy Newton, known for the Debrief and her own podcast, I'll Pop Repeat, and a bunch of other things. So, if you watched her interview on Disclosure Team's video, you already know a lot about her. But Chrissy, do you want to say hello and give us a little information about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry if this is streams a little choppy too. I am having good old technical difficulties with with my. As you can see, my lens keeps coming in and out. Yeah, I have a podcast with a friend of mine called Alt Pop Repeat, and I also have a show on the Debrief called Rebelliously Curious, and obviously work with the Debrief and do their media relations and a director of media for the company.
That's pretty awesome. So I know of you from the debrief, and then I realized once I got on Twitter that you had the alt pop repeat, and then I found you on
Yeah.
Instagram, and I was like, oh, I need to listen to this because it looks cool, and they look like two really amazing women. I know you are, and I haven't listened to it
Oh,
yet, but
thanks.
I'm it's on my list for sure.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
you kind of touched on a lot of your why for getting into this subject, but I think that it's great, that it's been part of your life for a very long time and that you cover like a wide variety of subjects. So what made you want to kind of do both of those subjects, technology, UAP, because you touch on a lot of everything in your show.
Yeah, why did I wanna do it? God, first of all, I've loved technology since I was, like, a little kid. I've always tried to be an early adopter to certain things, apparently not today with my life with my equipment. But that's something that I've always loved. I've always loved futurism. That's mainly where technology and with a combination of futurism. And then UFOs, as, some people know if they've ever heard part of my story, is my dad got me into it. My dad was an experiencer, and he had a UFO sighting with a group of friends. And since that day, he was always obsessed with it and wanting to know more about the topic and figure out what actually happened to him and them and what that night consisted of and are UFOs real? And now fast forward, up to this date, we know that they are real. So the crazy thing is now I'm teaching him more about UAPs and before he was teaching me about it. So it's just full circle now, which is really, really lovely. And it's something that my dad and I have a connection with, which I'll always cherish.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
was listening to your story on, Vinny's show, and it's like,
Thanks.
wow, like so many people have been experiencing and into this phenomenon for a very long time. But
Yeah.
just, within the last maybe like 5 years, people are coming out more and more and more. So I think it's really amazing that people are putting themselves out there. So you work in communications before you worked with the debrief?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I've owned a PR company for 12 years in Canada. We work across North America, but in Canada called Vocab Communications. And how it kind of started with the debrief is I shouldn't even say this. It was 2 years ago. I started my podcast with my friend, and we covered the UFO topic. And Marie's like, "You know a lot about UFOs," and I said to her, "I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I've gone to conferences, gone to crop circle trips with research, and I said I've always done it on my own accord and try to get as close to the phenomenon as possible, but just more as a personal, never really out front and vocal about it until around like the 2017. A friend of mine, I was in Mexico, that's a little more forward in the UFO community, was like, Chrissy, like everything's going mainstream. And, he's always been kind of like the PR person in the UFO world, and that's Victor Vigiani. He's a good friend of mine. He lives in Toronto. We would go for dinner. At least we do go for actually just text. I was texting him today before I went on when we're going to
Yeah.
go for dinner because he was just on Vinny's show.
Yes,
And
exactly. Like 2 hours ago
right.
or something.
Yeah, and so Victor and I have been friends for years, and he introduced me to Paul Hilliard here, the former Minister of Defense, and has connected me into the Canadian side of the community, just as someone of interest for myself. And then he was really one of the people that kind of helped me push me forward into this community as well. I would say Marie did, because she's like, you know a lot more about UFOs than I ever imagined you would. She, and then along with Victor, just being a really great mentor, good friend, and somebody that said, like, hey, this is a good time for you to start working in your craft of communications in this field because I can actually do it and I really do love it. So it just sometimes time it's all about timing.
Yeah, definitely. I hear a story like yours, and I think, well, she was really supposed to be in this, because it feels
That's
like,
nice.
you've had the connection at a long time, but you didn't intend to be such a big voice in the community, and here you are. I feel like that is definitely a calling, and I'm glad that you listened to it because you offer so much. Did you have any fears when you kind of switched and started becoming more public with your knowledge about UAP?
Yeah, I still do a little bit. I still wonder if, because I run a media, like I work in public relations and I work with media across North America, not as much before because, or sorry, before there was more ridicule. So even for me getting into the field, I couldn't because I might have been blacklisted from media. I still am a little bit wary in the Canadian side, not so much on the American side, because we have a lot of people, and I play more in that field within UAPs on the American side. Canadians are really conservative, and same with Canadian media. So and I do a lot of press here with other clients. So yeah, I wonder sometimes if my clients are like, Chrissy, like you have such you're gaining a larger voice in the UAP community, but you also do all of our branding as well. So that hasn't been an issue yet, or like I should say, media relations. It hasn't been an
Right.
issue yet, which is really great. But I do think about it sometimes, where people might maybe not work with me because outside of the UFO world, because they don't think that UFOs are something of relevance or importance, or they just think it's mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
But at that point now, I've kind of made a decision where, this is important to me and I enjoy doing it and I love it. I love the community and it's something that I'll consistently keep doing because I think there's value in it. And I think we all want an answer, or we want some form of
Absolutely.
lobbying and things to change. So I will I will gracefully bow out from certain situations if a client doesn't want it just because they don't want to be connected with something to this degree. Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah, you really people really are putting themselves out there and risking their personal and professional life to get disclosure to happen and to educate people. And even, some of the other topics that you covered, some people might think are controversial, but
Mhm.
obviously our community embraces that. We like the out of the box things that you cover. So that's cool. And your dad must be so proud when he sees you doing what you do.
Yeah, my dad, I think sometimes he just shakes his head and he's like, "What?" Like,
You're doing what?
and I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's, for him, and it's also just sometimes I don't even tell him stuff. Like when I'm doing, I tell him we talk about more new stuff, but I don't always tell him my own things because it's just so much. And he's getting older, and
Oh yeah.
it's for us, it's more about a hobby that we do together, and it's also something when it comes to new information, we just like to discuss it. And also his perspective has taught me a lot about my own perspective. And then also he looks at things differently. Like before I did my interview, about like anything about stealth planes, with TD Barnes, I called my dad because my dad and I've had this conversation about stealth technology for a long time. And he's the one who even told me about the A-12 and the SR-71. Like I would have never even known it if it wasn't for him when I was younger, talking about planes and like loving planes. And so one of the first things I wanted to do as an interview was talk to someone about that because it was a connection to me, but it was also something where I could learn more. And it was also so that my dad could also learn a little bit
Yeah.
more, and talk to somebody who actually worked on the technology. So it was nice because I had a great conversation with my dad, but it went full circle. It was literally, I called my dad 10, 15 minutes before I did the interview and said, I'm doing this. And he's like, what? And I said,
Oh,
yeah. I go, so I was like, you can watch it later. But it was something that, yeah, it's nice to be able to have it. There's things that come full circle all the time. So
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny, like with like friends, like nobody knows that I do this. Like I told my
yeah,
husband, like he finally looked at my Instagram. He's like, "What's going on? Like you have all these
yeah,
followers out of nowhere." I was like, "I don't know. I just thought that like I was passing
yeah,
information on holding my part of the world and my, I'm a certain demographic. I'm a stay-at-home wife. I'm an army wife. I'm a witch.
cool.
I love to learn. So I'm kind of just holding my own little space here and trying to get the information out. But it's hilarious when people that are super close to you are like, "You're doing what?" Like it's
Yeah.
like they're like, or they try to tell you some news and you have to be polite. Yeah, I heard about that. Like, so it's interesting how the people in our life that are not in the community don't really think about this because we kind of eat, sleep, and breathe the technologies, the consciousness stuff, and anything fringe, really, it feels like this community is into. And we're just always looking for the next thing with UAP news, especially with what the government's doing now. So you mentioned your interview with TD Barnes.
Yep.
And I love his approach. It's so like, it's almost like it's just so straightforward, because we have we have all these other gentlemen that claim to have worked at Area 51, like Boyd Bushman and Bob Lazar.
Right.
So, and everybody's story is, a little different. And obviously Mr. Barnes' story is we can kind of relate to that a little bit more because these planes are in existence and we can see it, whereas we can't see the work from the other two gentlemen that were working at Area 51. So how, like, I know this is opinion, but how do you differentiate whose story to integrate into your own knowledge bank and who to kind of like keep in consideration but off to the side?
It's a great question. I look at everything by motive. What is their motive? What's their back history? Bob Lazar is very controversial, and his backstory is very controversial as well. And I also do think not everyone's history plays a part in their, what their future is going to be or anything else, but it also does say a lot about their character and what type of person they are. So for me, I look at Bob Lazar as, it's not that I don't think he's credible. I still have a lot of questions about his story, and I feel that there's a lot of gaps, and there are a lot of things that have come forward saying that maybe he wasn't in his position that he should have been in. Like maybe he was, maybe he was in a lower position. Maybe he didn't work on the base they say he was. Like there's so many things. TD is one of those people that I looked at where he helped reconfirm that he didn't know anything of him at that point. But again, we have to remember that he didn't work at the same time as Bob Lazar, but from what he knows and his knowledge, along with, and this is controversial because not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but even his group of people that he's worked with on the base, they still talk to each other, still agree that Bob Lazar never worked there. So that says a lot. Like it does. When you have a group of people working at Area 51 and they still say that this is, no, we don't even know who this guy is. It doesn't mean that Bob wasn't working on something really, really, confidential. And again, they were very siloed into sections of the base. Right. So they didn't always get to associate with each other. They associated around certain people. So it's hard. I look at Bob Lazar and I look at TD Barnes. I'm going to lean a little to TD. Doesn't mean that Bob Lazar is right, but I have, TD did work on the base, and there's more proof that he worked there. So I've leaned towards his story, but I know that's a really controversial a lot, and I've gone back and forth. My opinion might change again.
It's hard because you see interviews with Bob, and you're like, he's kind of like likable. Like when he talks, like you want to believe him. He has that underdog feeling, and we have Mr. Barnes, and he's just like all these points, everything's verifiable about him. But you want to believe both of them, and they're conflicting information,
They're hard. And there's other stories of people like that worked on the base and whatnot, and they've shown photos and or like of aliens, and some of those photos have already checked out to not be credible. So I've harder stories with that. But we'll always consistently follow, and I really hope we figure out if Bob Lazar's story was true or not. But I don't know if we ever will. But it's something that maybe he'll keep to the grave.
Yes, very touchy, or he'll spill it out at the grave even more, like Mr. Bushman did. But so like your interview kind of created a ripple in Twitter, obviously, because Twitter's always rippling. But
about Twitter,
that's good. I think it's good when people do that, because it fires up people's like passions. Whether they know how to handle that passion or not in an adult way is another story. But I think that a lot of people kind of there's people that we've dedicated so much time to UAP and for him to say that we don't have like there's never been aliens here, which I know people are, that's another touchy word, alien, right?
It
So
is, yeah.
it's a tough thing, because it also kind of makes people feel like he's discrediting everybody that's worked, and like Chris Mellon and all the main whistleblower guys. So I know that was like everybody's issue. So you've already answered this question because we just kind of answered it. I was going to ask kind of how you felt about that, but I think that we answered that. So have you looked into any of the Tic Tac shaped, accounts in Colombia?
I haven't seen any recent ones. I know that they're out there. I just haven't seen all of the incidents that are there. But I know that they're. You were saying in your previous questions, like that you sent me before, that there's so much more conversation around the Tic Tac now in the shape and more civilian sightings. So I'm not surprised. I'm not. We have something called a culture loop. Culture loops are really interesting when you have this has happened for years too, by the way, not even just the Tic Tac.
Yeah.
So in UFO sightings, we have a sighting, and then in pop culture, we will then, mass media and everyone else will talk about it. They'll hype it up. They put it into, it gets, it's spread around. Before it was through Life magazine. Now it's obviously through the internet and social media. So people then what happens, they've seen this through mass media, and then they see something again and it reconfirms what they've seen. So we call it a culture loop. And
that's interesting.
We have tons of that. Yeah, and we have tons of them. And I'm not surprised that with the Tic Tac now, since 2017 and everything else, that people are seeing more of these images because mass media has now put more of a attention on it, and people now are cognitive of those shapes and what they look like. So they might be seeing something what they think is a Tic Tac shape, and they're calling it out but before they might have seen that in the sky, but never knew anything of it. But now because of mass media. So there's, and again, like I'm a huge UFO fan, and I do follow it, but not every single one is a UFO.
Right.
And that's the hardest, maybe 1% or lower at that times are, but it doesn't really matter. It just really takes one for it to be real anyway in context. So
we've seen that with the Nimitz and the gimbal and Go Fast and
exactly. And more culture loops are going to keep happening, and where the shapes are going to evolve. Before we had, flying saucers, and now orbs and Tic Tacs and pyramids. Like, one's probably going to be a hexagon one day.
Yeah,
like, who knows, right?
There's one. There's one that's the cube, like inside a circle and a sphere. I have some pictures of one that was like a ball,
the blimp's
and then
my
it turned
favorite.
into like a peanut. Like they morph. It's and that plays into like the whole question: that are we seeing it how they want us to see it, if it's a consciousness telepathic thing, or not? But the actual, I like to talk about the Tic Tac and the Nimitz because I feel like it has so much information to it and so many credible witnesses. So do you think do you think it's an AI maybe, or do you think it's being like flown with an entity in it, or do you think it's like a little bit of both?
That's such a hard question because like none of us know, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Nobody knows. It's and I know a lot of people don't even like answering this question. And because they're just not sure.
Yeah.
And I don't like answering it as well too, because I obviously don't know. But what I would imagine is that I think that it's something like, if it's AI, unbelievable technology.
Yes.
And then if it's something, it has to be something. And I know Lou Elizondo said this as well. And this is, I think even last year he said this, or maybe it was the year before that, but that it's probably something that if it is interdimensional or anything else, it's something that we've never even thought of before.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I lean towards. And before, my narrative has changed immensely since I've been younger. I've gone through alien moments. I've gone through is it again, I still question if it is our own technology or again, if it's foreign adversaries, because that is something that's very possible. We've gone through multiple disinformation campaigns in the States, earlier. So why can't they be happening presently? So my theory where I sit now is that if we're not going through some form of disinformation campaign or some, any form of that, then it is something that we will probably not have even thought of. Like, exactly. I don't think we actually might even have the ability to cognitively understand it yet until our science catches up.
Yes.
And one day it probably will. And we're really lucky because we have people like Avi Loeb and other scientists
Yeah.
from Harvard like looking at this seriously. So we might be alive. We're probably going to be like 80, or maybe I imagine, or on my deathbed where, they're sending people into space and, going on travel and tourism. And we find out that, what it actually is, or we won't. So I'm,
Yeah.
whoop, geez, there goes my earphone. I think that it's something that we're never going to ever, we don't know what it is yet. And I don't think we
Yes.
actually have the science yet to know. So,
yeah, there's so many people out there. They're like, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. It's hard. Because people get invested emotionally in these, because so many people, like when they have an experience, like it really does change people's life. Even if they see like the tiniest dot in the sky doing some weird stuff, and they know it's not a satellite. It really, like, I remember my friend called me last year, and she had her first sighting. And she had her little video of this little black thing like moving very erratically. And, I was like, well, check the flight patterns. I've been, a secret nerd for a long time. And check this, check that. And she checks. She's like, it was real. Like, it's a UFO. I just knew it. Oh my gosh. Like, she was just like in awe. And I love hearing that from people when they discover this subject. And a lot of people are kind of like, oh, well, they're just on the bandwagon. Well, let them come on the bandwagon. We need everybody to get on board. And if it changes somebody's life like that, like now she does it's opened up so much for her. Like her mind is opened so much. So I do love that aspect of this. And I think that everybody can kind of get on board with that, is the expansion process that takes place in our minds. It breaks us out of our box when we see something that we cannot fathom. Like you said, like we don't know, we might not ever know. And it is interesting to look into all the theories, like, the warp bubbles and stuff like that, but they all fall apart at some point. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, but I think you're right. We have to start being open-minded, like have an open mind, and then be able to figure out or have some kind of sci-fi even that we might, because those things follow. We're not asking questions and trying to figure things out and looking outside the box. We're just going to keep doing the same thing. So I appreciate people, just because I appreciate when people have different theories and are trying to prove their theories and show evidence to it or something around it or proof as much as they possibly can, because we need more people like that rather than people going with the status quo all the time.
Yeah, I agree, because like we look back in history, every major scientific discovery was just like nobody believed it until they showed it in math, basically. So
people didn't even believe germs exist. Yeah, didn't even believe germs existed.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, and a lot of people died because of that.
And I think it was Semmelweis that was like, "Hey guys, we should wash our hands," because it was happening. A lot of women were dying in his hospital, like way back in the day, and he's like, "Let's just wash our hands," and nobody wanted to do it. And all these women were dying because they were just like dipping from one birth into the next, and it was, you could only imagine how things were. And he implemented the hand washing once he got some power, and it changed the world. Like that keeps us healthy now, just something simple like washing our hands. So it's really crazy that little things people say end up coming into fruition in a very big way.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So Lou Elizondo recently mentioned a technology that would be available to the public eventually, an AI software that would be able to differentiate between, a real UFO or UAP video versus a fake one. Do you think, and of course this is speculation, what sort of things do you think that this AI software is looking for? Do you think it's the 5 observables, or do you think it's something with the way it moves? Like, this is something that's kept me up at night, so I want other people's opinions.
Yeah. There's lots of conversations of different technology that are coming out that we've been looking into in the debrief as well around UAP. So a lot of it, like even if we look at the Galileo project from Avi Loeb, a lot of it's going to be making sure that they're close. Like for Galileo, and I assume that an AI software would be similar, would be looking at really, really high def images, close images of what they are, and being able to analyze it. Also like its propulsion systems, like how, obviously how it's moving, how it does move, and then trying to get a better idea of what the craft's made out of. And then along with speed, like I think it's going to be all of that. And then having a better understanding if something is a UFO and what it is. And if it isn't a UFO, then being able to say that very quickly. And I think that's going to be the benefit of an AI, is that it's going to say, this is unidentified and this isn't. Instead of us taking, like, because now we go to MUFON or a group of us and we're like, please identify this. Like, everybody who is an expert in this area of study, take a look at it and what do you think, and break it down, where AI will be able to do that instantaneously. And that will forever change the way that we probably look at UFOs. And we'll probably be able to use this, these AI software at home. So then every individual will be able to use will be able to track UFOs at home and be able to collect major big data for all of us. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Is that a bad thing?
We're all going to be out there every
to see. Right. Everybody's going to be at home being a UFO hunter. Right. Everyone's going to be a UFO hunter tracking.
We're going to walk around with like a GoPro pointed up just in case.
Exactly. It's going to be an app on their phone, and or just like software on their computer. Like, that's where that's going, is software on the computer. And it's and people will be tracking their own UFOs in their own area, and then being able to maybe submit that data to their local MUFON or their local representative that is tracking aerial phenomenon. And then we get a better idea. We also might find different shapes. Like, who knows what we're going to find when the average person starts doing it. We might see traction's going to go up, I think. But instead of being outside of military bases, we're probably going to see it around a lot of like major city centers and other stuff, I would imagine, just because we have more people watching things and watching the sky.
Yeah, that's kind of what, that's going to be exciting to see with Galileo Project in combination with this. And if they make like a public database, it's going to be like, our kids are going to be like having so much information to play with, and hopefully they know more than us. I'm definitely not moving on when I die. I'm going to stay in haunts a little bit so I can like see all this happen. But
that's what I say. Well, like, I want to die when I'm earlier in my 70s. I'm like, no. I want to go to like over 100 and more, just to see what happens.
I want to be the old crotchety woman in the
I don't care if I'm old. Exactly. And people, and if I'm still like talking about stories from like 2021, I don't care. I just want to be alive to hopefully see it. So.
Exactly. It would be so amazing. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about your interview with sorry, I'm going to mess up his name. Carl John Friston. I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah. Friston.
Okay. And he was talking about psychedelics and consciousness, which I love because I'm a big advocate of the study of psychedelics and psilocybin, and just the more you read about it, you see that there's more benefits. A lot of experimentation is going on, or studies, I should say, on humans with PTSD, and it's shown like to help them so much. So what is your views on the role of consciousness and the phenomena? Because so many people are having these experiences where they, like the summoning, or they'll meditate and then they see something, or even kind of be going through like a very like a pivot point in their life, and they see something in the sky, and it just like it ignites something in them, or it emotionally affects them. So what is your view on the whole consciousness and UAP connection?
I love the concept of consciousness, and like everyone that talks about having experiences, but I find it really, really interesting. I've never had like a cosmic connection in that form, or even just using psychedelics and to have a cosmic connection. I've never had that, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's worth evaluating. So the couple things here is that, we don't know if it's the drug, or if someone's like, say, connecting into their pineal gland and they're using some form of psilocybin or ayahuasca or DMT. We don't know. We're just watching this effect that happens to them after, but we know that it is, coming from a pineal gland. We know that, and we know what the pineal gland consists of. So I think in that context, and again, I am not a scientist or a psychologist, but I find it interesting, and I think that there's parallels there, and I think we obviously need to study it more, and we are doing that, which is really, really great.
Yeah.
And I think that we might, through that road, I think we're going to find a lot of other connections with it not just UAP, other things that are related into consciousness. And we will understand that if it is a mechanism of ourselves doing it and it is our brain, or if it's something that is that it's higher spiritually, we don't know. But I'm on the road. I don't know how I feel if it's both, because again, like I don't know, but I'm observing it and watching it because I think that it's interesting, and I think there are connections to it. I can't wait to, again, we have our science that can say this is what's happening. And I also think it's probably maybe connected into the experiencer role too, like abductions and things like that. Like there is probably something in that all connected together, attached to consciousness, I should say, that people feel like, because for them, an experiencer can say like, this is real to me. And for them, that is real. And that is 100% valid. Like no one, I don't think anybody is allowed to tell an experiencer of any form that what they felt and what they experienced isn't real to them. But then what we'll be able to do is be able to find a better answer. And if it is something that's, you know, a little bit more fringe, then we'll find out what that is. If not, then at least we'll be able in the next X amount of years with science to say like, hey, this is what you're actually going through. And this is a byproduct of your mind or what happens. We know more about the brain now. But I think we're in a really awesome time right now that we're probably going to figure out more about consciousness in the next 10 to 20 years than we'd ever imagine, attached to psychedelics and the phenomenon and everything else. Yeah. It's a cool time for like science, really like science fiction that we would say that's turning more into science fact. And I think really that's, and I'm glad that I'm part of this, this time in life going through it. Maybe not like 50 years ago personally.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so many people are kind of like getting so antsy right now and, oh, this has happened before. Well, no, it hasn't. Like we've never seen something get passed in an act by Congress. Like that hasn't happened. That we know of, right? Maybe it snuck in there somehow, like the Donald Trump thing, but you know, which actually benefited the community. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
So my husband's out of town, so he like texts me. He just got his phone back because he does like training and they take their phones. But yeah, so I just think that people really need to like kind of step out of their selves and look at the big picture. Like things are moving forward. We're not, and this has not happened in history. Like, yeah, maybe we got some, like you said, you talked about like the loop. What would you call it?
Culture loop.
Yeah, the culture loops, definitely. Now that I know there's a word for it, that's very cool. We've seen that, but we've never seen it get this serious. You know, they had the whole convention in San Marino with all these people. And like you said, it's going to be the Geneva. It's possibly going to be the Geneva of UFOs and UAP. Sorry, I'm still calling them I alternate.
No, it's okay.
Make everyone happy.
Each their own, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just think that people should step back and kind of embrace what's happening. And if you're unhappy with something, then maybe like step out of yourself for a minute and try to see it like, you know, the whole picture, because everybody has their role and their opinion in it. And I just love that. And you know what you said right now about experiencers, that's kind of what made me like reach out to you, because I've always been intimidated by women in the field because you're all so intelligent and just like, you have it together. And I love watching the women work, and the men are exciting too. But, you know, like I just love seeing there's not as many women working as men, and the women that are working are very phenomenal at what they do. So when you had mentioned, and I don't even remember where I saw it, I think I saw a clip of you talking about experiencers and how what you just said, like nobody should be discredited. There should be like a space for everybody. And that's when I saw the altruism in you. So you've got an amazing brain, you've got a beautiful heart, and that's why I approached you, because I was like, oh, she's badass, but she's approachable because she's got this big heart. So, and I didn't even realize you were my first interview, because I've been doing stuff on YouTube, but not interviews, until like the day before yesterday. I was like, this is my first interview. What am I doing?
I appreciate it. That's amazing. Thank you for having me as your first interview.
Yeah, but I love how you have such you know, you really do, you do look at the big picture, and you look at everybody's experience, I think, and you're willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So I really love that about you and your work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we just had, you know, the FY 2022 budget passed, saying that they're going to require like annual reports and happening. And this is kind of something that's like there's going to be an actual committee, whereas, you know, the task force was sort of temporary. How do you feel about that? Like I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that I think it's going to evolve in many ways. Like if we have the Geneva of UFOs, we will have people like groups like ICER and other groups coming together working with the United Nations. And who knows if that all rolls into one ball. It could be an office, and it could be its own thing. And I think that's fantastic. And I also think that a lot of us that are in this community might have a little bit more of a say than we've ever had before. Like this is the first time, and I say this to people on Twitter too, and everywhere. I'm like, this is the first time that I know of that the average civilian that is interested in this subject actually has a voice and is actually driving the narrative. Like we are driving the narrative just as much as any political leader or anybody else like Lou Elizondo. Like all of us have way more of a voice and an ability to make change than anybody's ever had before. So I think we have to be mindful of that. And as that whole process grows and that committee grows, there could be people that are in this community that are on UFO Twitter right now or doing interviews that could be really crucial to it and part of it. So it's fun. Like again, like this is the first time it's ever happened.
Yes.
Like I would die to go to a United Nations meeting and talk about UFOs and exopolitics. Like,
It's just
I
nuts.
don't,
It's
I
nuts,
know.
really.
I would even just being in the room covering it as media, I would be
Yes.
grateful, just because like it's never happened before. And
No.
it's people, it's all of these people, it's every single person that is like doing this in media, lobbying, like doing shows, Twitter, contributing, like research, like everyone is doing their part so that in the next like 30, 40 years, when I'm so much older and all of us are older, the whole new generation is going to have so much more
Yes. Yes.
information and ability to connect and to keep doing research than we even have now. And I think that's cool because like look at everybody. Like we can do all these shows and talk to each other around the world. Like I don't know
Exactly.
many people, obviously like 50 years ago, you weren't getting people
No.
talking around the world. Like I've been on a UFO meeting once and there was 40 people from around the world. And I
It's
just like,
amazing.
I know, I was like, what? This is insane. I'm like,
Yeah.
all from different countries, all looking to figure out and work together. And I just think that there's some.
Oh, we lost audio a little bit. Lost the audio. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
There we go. Technology.
There it is. Okay. Yeah, I agree with all that. It's very, very cool. And it's history. It's really history. Like I'm super excited about it, and I'm excited for all the people that kind of have answers now. Like I know it's not completely answer like what happened, with experiencers and experiencers that have the adverse, things happening in their life. Like, well, she's crazy. She thinks she got abducted, and like the people bring that up, or it ruins people's careers. People give up their lives, their lifestyles to cover this. So it's definitely historic, and I think it's also vindicating for people that kind of been thought of as like crazy before, or like tinfoil hat or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and look at people like UAPX, like Gary and the whole group of them. They're creating stuff. They've had something that's happened to them, and now they've created something where they can research UFOs more and have a better understanding. Like I think that speaks volumes. And anybody who's had an experience like that, until somebody else, it doesn't mean that you can't have empathy. And I think that that's the most important thing, is being open-minded, have empathy, and listening to the story and not judging and just letting them explain what they've experienced, but then also people working together to find solutions, which I think is cool. I don't know any other community that
No.
does this except for ours.
Yeah, just like the big phone home, that was like you said, people all over the world.
Yeah.
And it gives people somebody to talk to about the subject, because like it's in the news, it's in mainstream news, and it's kind of died out a little bit. People like most people don't have people to talk to about this, like in everyday life. Like I always joke about being on the playground with my kids and like being the weird UFO mom playing crop circle towns. Like, want to be my friend? do you think that there's UFOs? Like, like how do you even like make an icebreaker like that? So it's one of those things where us having this technology and being able to create different things to kind of find our own answers and start our own conversations is truly amazing.
Yeah.
I did have one more question, and it kind of revolves around information being leaked with it, kind of controversial things that maybe not have been verified. And from a communication standpoint, how does an information release, like even like a legitimate one, like how does that play into the whole phenomena of like disclosure?
It just depends on how you're looking at communications with disclosure. Like my side, because I work in public relations and I work with media, it's really important to me, like working with people like the Debrief and then being able to seed other stories to media or talk to media about what we're doing and looking at like, I'm part of an amazing team that are investigative journalists. I'm not an investigative journalist like that. I'm growing in my own craft and they're giving me that ability to do that. But these men are amazing and they're really good at what they do. And I'm so fortunate that I get to learn from them. But they're also giving me the ability to help communicate something that is a phenomenon to journalists that have been, they have to do back information for 70 years. Like that's a lot of work. It's too much work to do a segment. So they rely on people like us or people like, Tim McMillan and MJ Banias sorry, my gosh, Micah Hanks. They rely on us and rely on them. And I would say doing good investigative and proper journalism so that I can communicate that message forward. And once that happens, that changes the line. So like people like myself and Victor Vigiani, and there will be way more PR people in this community as we go along that will be able to condense information for people and for media to make it manageable, understandable, and then getting the right story out, less conspiracy, more facts.
That's
along with working then with scientists in the same vein to be able to say, hey, you're working on this project the science community sometimes has troubles communicating in layman's terms what they're doing. So if it comes to UFOs or any form of UAP, myself and other PR people are there to help scientists talk to the general public and media, or just people in general that need to know more and be able to condense it so that it's easier and it's quicker to disseminate. So we're not, again, stuck with conspiracy theories. We're sitting with facts.
Yes. That's really interesting because you mentioned it earlier when we were kind of talking about the questions and stuff. And I was like, I've never thought about that. Like, how do you do that? Like, it's just, you get all this information and like you said, so it's an interesting side of it that nobody really talks about. So thank you for answering that. That was kind of the last question. Are you open to taking any questions from people in the chat?
Yeah, 100%. Is my audio still okay for you guys? I don't know if
it's okay. Yeah. I'm always afraid, but no, I'm always afraid mine's gonna cut out.
My earbuds, it went out. I'm like, apparently like technology is just going down today for me.
Yeah. It's everybody's having some sort of issue. So I saw a question earlier and I can't find it now. And somebody asked about, there we go. Oh, it's Christian. He asked if you knew the top 3 Canadian UFO cases.
Oh, well, Falcon is one of them for sure, I would say. And there's this Montreal incident that I actually don't know a lot about. And I just sent this to a group of friends on an Instagram chat. There's a commemorative coin that has just come out, and you can get it in the Canadian Mint, and it has the UFO Montreal incident. And I was like, hold on. I'm like, there's a Montreal UFO incident. And I just found out yesterday about it. So I'm literally, after this live stream, I'm going to go buy the coin because I want one. And the other 2 UFO incidences that have happened that are on commemorative coins, I can't be able to get it. But yeah, anyway, long story short, there are, and apparently there's a new Montreal one that I do not know of.
Cool.
So I'm gonna go buy that coin, and if anybody else,
please buy it,
because apparently it's 92% sold out.
Oh wow! Yeah. I feel like I need to go get it, even though I'm not Canadian. But I was just joking earlier because I was like, Neil posted something with some like Canada song on his story about tonight, and I was like, I didn't even know what it was. I just reposted it. I'm like, oh, it's all about Canada. I was like, how am I meeting all these cool Canadians? I don't think I've ever met so many other than like driving through Canada to get to Alaska. So that is very
Oh,
cool.
nice. You've been to Alaska. That's awesome.
Yeah, I lived there for 3 years, and I like had some like orb experiences, but I was studying molecular biology. I had an internship with the Alaska
Oh,
State,
wow.
their college out there, Fairbanks, University of Fairbanks, University of Alaska Fairbanks. There we go, tongue twisted. But yeah, so I was like, and I did a lot of PCR and gene libraries, which is like a day-long thing. So I knew about all these hotspots there, but Alaska is very big. So when you're trying to get to like the Alaska Triangle or these hotspots that everybody knows about in Alaska, it's not like a day trip. So and then you have to take into account like the timing in the year. Like, is there going to be ice there if you go north? Is there even going to be gas stations? Like, it's so hard to travel in Alaska. You have to really plan it.
I'd love to go to Alaska. I've never even, I want to go to the Northwest Territories. That's close enough to Alaska. I haven't been that far out.
It's beautiful.
I would
British Columbia and Yukon Territory.
Yeah, that's the farthest I've been is like our East Coast.
Okay.
I've been out to PEI, and then I've been to Alberta, and then I've also been to British Columbia. But
British Columbia is gorgeous.
Yeah, I always say I'm like if my industry was in British Columbia, I'm like I'd be there in a heartbeat.
You'd be there.
Oh,
it's beautiful.
Like it's also like the stuff that I love. Like I like being outdoors and I kayak and it's like typical Canadian.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
so
like
beautiful
I
out there.
enjoy outdoor activities. We only just get them so much though, right? Because it's gonna be winter soon.
Yeah, we ditched the car. Like our car went into a ditch in British Columbia.
Oh.
And it took and it was kind of like in the middle of British Columbia. Like there was a campground we were going to because we camped for like our honeymoon was traveling and camping from Arizona to Alaska. We only stayed in a hotel twice. So we did a lot of camping at these beautiful campgrounds and hikes. It was just like the perfect, like I love stuff like that. And British Columbia was just like eye candy everywhere. Like there was these like almost like turquoise lakes, and just the trees are so big and beautiful. And we ditched the car because it was raining and there was not a shoulder. My husband thought there was a shoulder. So we ended up at this campground, and I keep joking, like, if this happened like in some of the states, like people would just drive by. But I swear, like everybody stopped to check on us. Yeah. And like they like helped us, back to the campground so we didn't have to walk in the rain. And people like fed us and brought us like hot cocoa while we were waiting for our car to get delivered by the tow truck. So I have like kind of like a stressful memory about British Columbia, but then like the beauty of it and how like awesome people were. And we met this awesome like German couple. They had like a baby. They were traveling the United States and Canada. So I was just like, that was a cool experience. It was like one of those experiences where you're like, why is this happening? And then it actually turned out kind of like you kind of get your faith in humanity restored.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I'm like, and it's also, I'm just happy to hear that Canadians were nice when you were out there. It's good to know.
Yes. So I don't see I didn't see any other questions, and those are all the questions that I have. Do you have, oh, here we go. This one is from Neil, and it says, does Chrissy believe the RCMP retrieved a craft off a Canadian lake in Winnipeg?
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm not. I know that's funny because that's like our like Area 51 kind of Bob was our kind of So I don't know. I would like to. That's also one of our commemorative coins as well too.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the crashes. There's a lot of. I don't know. I want to say I would hope so. And if
I feel like there's the us that wants to believe all this stuff, and then there's
exactly
us that,
Canadians,
skeptical.
Especially Canadian government is so conservative with UFOs, and that's something that myself and I think some other people are here that I know within the UFO community are pushing towards Canadian government to get a little bit more active in this. And the question is why? And the questions are, what else do they know? And what else do we know? Why is everybody else being a little bit more open to having these conversations and we're not? So I think at one point, yes, I will. I'm on it. Let's just say.
Because
I'm on it. I'm
Canadian
learning as much
too,
as we
so.
go and talking too. So I'm hoping that politically in the next year or two, with the people within this UFO community in Canada, we'll start putting a little bit pressure on our government as well. So we're just
Yeah, you
Canadians
guys
are so conservative. It's just
are they real? I guess I don't
we
think about
are.
it, you know?
We are. I'm not going to consume myself on that because I'm not as conservative as the average Canadian, I would say.
Yeah, you seem very
I'm okay
outgoing
asking.
and open-minded.
I'm also okay asking questions and grilling and
I
trying to
guess
get
the Canadians
answers.
I'm meeting are in the UAP community, so that's like my view. I'm like, oh, all Canadian. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That'd be horrible.
But in
If I
general, they most people are like they follow a lot of status quo here.
yeah,
Americans are really great at being vocal and active and changing and supporting for change. Canadians are a little bit more passive and can be passive aggressive. And I know any Canadian watches this probably just booed me, but it's the truth. And we are. So I just hope that, yeah, our community, I think there's only so many of us too, but it's growing in Canada. And I think that in the next year or two, for sure, we'll have way more conversations about UFO within the government and what's actually happened out here. Yeah, in different cases.
And a lot of it could be like how it's happening here, like kind of the old blood's moving out and the new blood's coming in. The younger guys are coming into, positions as the other ones move out. So I think that kind of maybe will happen, and they'll have fresh eyes on what's going on, and hopefully like ideas.
Well, and also the beauty of Americans and having American media and politics putting a heavy spotlight on UFOs makes our media and our government start asking questions as well, and along with the people. So the more that this happens across the border, the more that people in Canada are going to go, hey, like, why aren't you talking about this too?
Yes.
We need to start having a say in this. And
Absolutely.
also just releasing more of our cases and being a little bit more frank with it.
Yeah, I think everybody wants more cases. So yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I think it'll be hopefully a ripple effect. And this is like one of the times where my country has done something and I've been like, go America. Because sometimes we do stuff or we get like presidents or people in politics and I'm like, I'm going to apologize on behalf of all the American public. Like I feel like guilty even though I didn't do anything. So I'm happy that we finally did something that is helping the world, I think. But with that, instead of pissing everybody off, we have a question from Lou. When are we going to see the photo of Chrissy that Chrissy's dad took?
I love you. I was laughing when I saw that pop up. I know my dad people are like, my dad has it in a safe. And when I was at the house recently, I asked him, I was like, I need the photo, Dad. I was like, and to be honest, I want to print it. I have a Billy Meyer photo on my wall. That's everyone considers one of the fake photos, but I got it at the Arizona convention, the UFO Congress, because I just liked the photo.
So it's so iconic. Like you have to have that somewhere in your house.
Right. It's in my kitchen. And so it's like my kitchen living room. Yeah. And I should put it back here, but I like it out there. Anyway, and so that photo I want to actually replace. And I told my dad, I was like, I want your photo and I want to blow it up and put it as a picture, but I also would love to show other people. My dad's a little bit hesitant to talk about his story, which I'm trying to talk to him a little bit more about being open, but he's like, you can talk about it, but I don't want other people to know who I am. And he's modest that way, and that's okay. But I do think his story is unbelievable. My dad, he literally had communication with a UFO with a group of people. They flashed their car lights at it and the thing flashed back. It's an unbelievable story, and he's not the only person that was there. I believe there was 5 of them. He was 18 at the time. So every time I talk to him a little bit more about the story, he's told me so many times that I've forgotten things. It's not my story, right? So I want him to tell it, and I hope
you have to have him, like, even if you don't release it, like, for yourself, like, Dad, tell me the story and record it. Have it.
Yeah, and I want him to do it in a time. I want him to, when he wants to do it and he says yes to it, then I will 100% push it forward, because I'd love for him to tell it on camera.
That would be amazing. Yeah. He sounds like an amazing, cool guy. Like, I just loved when you were talking about him on Vinny's channel, because you were just so I don't know. I like to get to know people. Like I'm not like the interviewer that wants to interview all these big names. I want to interview the interviewer because I love hearing people's story. I love hearing people's love stories. I love hearing like I just love people. So I want to hear what people have to say, and I want to know how they got to where they are and like what inspires them. So it's kind of a weird thing. Maybe I'm just nosy, but
No, I agree too. I agree. I think everyone in this community, motivation and why people are here is one of the most,
yeah.
to me, is one of the, outside of the incident, it's, I would say it's even parallel. Their incident and what motivates them to be here and to do this stuff and work together. And like, I think that's fascinating. Like, I would love to go on the road and meet a whole bunch of people from UFO Twitter and just be like, hey, like, let's geek out. Because
Yes.
I like to talk, I obviously like to talk about it, but also like, why do you do this? Like, why do all of us do this? Like,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think we all question that ourselves because I'll be here like
yeah,
I just start asking people to come on the channel and I'm like, what am I doing? Like I have like something I'm doing. Like, because before, like last year, I had a business where I taught metaphysical concepts with my friend, and we taught like meditation. We sold meditation oh my god, I can't talk kits, not meditation tits. So, and we taught about chakras and meditation. I did like a fun class on UFOs and star seeds, and
awesome.
spirit communication. So all the all the paranormal weird stuff. So I feel like I've been that was kind of like my prep to like talk to people because I really don't get nervous when I'm talking to people. I think like I kind of blow it up for like a minute in my head and then I like let it die. But but yeah, I just think that this is kind of like something I'm just doing for fun. And like a lot of people have hobbies. Like maybe this is I wouldn't call it a hobby though because I really care about it. Like I had my first sighting when I was 5, and I'm a multiple experiencer. So to me, like I've always wanted to talk about this, and I didn't find UFO, the UFO community until maybe like I want to say like maybe March. I want to say March when I discovered I found Vinny's page, and then everything else just started happening, and I realized I can talk about my experiences. I can talk about this weird stuff, without people kind of blowing it off or oh, I believe you believe that. I mean, like people actually give you a space to like present like how you feel or what you've experienced or what you've learned about the subject. And it's like so many different types of people. Like I bet you, like you said, like you probably never saw yourself doing this, talking about these subjects on your own forum, and then we have people like Lou Angeles was like, he was like, what, a comedian and actor. And now he made the big phone home.
Yeah.
Like people are just so passionate about this. So that you're right. I love hearing how people kind of got sparked their passions in this.
Yeah. And it's people working together, and it really is. I always say it's a great community. We don't always all agree all the time, but that's okay. It's fine. But I do think that we have really great stories, and everybody has their own motivations and their own reasons to do things. And for me, like the progression, I'm happy where it is now for sure. Sometimes I'm just like, oh man, it's like, it's so forward, but I'm like, you know what, that's who I am. And it makes me happy, and that's what matters. And I'm lucky to be part of the Debrief and meet wonderful people and like enjoy my life and be happy while doing this. I think that's really great. And I found something for sure that I can combine my work with my passion.
That's amazing.
But when I started it, for sure, it was just like, it was UFOs, and then with my dad and I just watching TV, reading books, him showing me, giving me information, me reading stuff with him, and then it turned into going into conventions, and then then it was like, now I'm like, I want to go on a crop circle tour, like I want to experience, he's got it was, and I think that part for me is like, I love that. Even if I wasn't doing this, I'd still go do that. Because I just enjoy it. And when I walked into the first convention, I said to my dad, it was like, these are our people. And he just looked at me and laughed. And I was like, yeah, but I just think it's it's a wonderful space, and everybody should be part of a community. We have a beautiful counterculture that is moving into something that's mainstream and opening up people's minds and getting people to work together. And it's also connecting people around the world. Like, again, like so
many good things.
I've never talked to so many people from so many different countries than I have in the UFO world. And I will never give that up. if I could, I would never give that up, because meeting people around the world to me is really important, even outside of UFOs. I just think it's cool that we have that ability to do that. So
yes, absolutely. And we can't take that for granted. Like you're like, it's crazy. Like when you see the Instagram lives and stuff, you're like, this person's in England and I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you. It's like, it's nuts. So Vinny says, crop circle mission to the UK, Chrissy?
Yes, 100%.
So does everybody want to meet there and do some crop circle stuff and meet in person?
Vinny, you need to have Gary on your show. I gotta introduce you to Gary. He's lovely. He's in Mexico right now working with Jaime, doing his TV show that's out there. But yeah, Gary was the person that took me on like a 4-day crop circle expedition, I would call it.
That's awesome. I love the nap in the crop circle. I was like,
I did a nap in the crop circle.
You just did it, but now it's on my bucket list.
It took a nap. We were just documenting so much stuff for so long, so I took like a cat nap in there. But it was just honestly, I love the UK, Vinny. I go a lot just to see friends, so I'm 100% down. So even like when I was watching like Luis, I met with him when I was in California. It was just, I met so many people when I'm traveling. I always, now that I can, I'm like, okay, how am I not going to hang out with somebody in the UFO community if I go to a city that somebody lives in? It'd just be, and I'd rather do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we all had to meet somewhere. Like we had to go to some big convention and just everybody from the community just go and meet there, because I think that I don't know, it's different. You know what I mean? Like you want to, like you have so much, I always joke that like all these people I have in common with are like all over the world now. Yeah. Like Yanni, often I'm like, I just want to hang out with you. Like I want to have these conversations around a campfire with like beer and wine. Like I want to sit around a campfire with everybody and just talk. Those are like, that's when the best conversations happen anyways. But I think it would be great to meet everybody in person. So
yeah, and that's how people become friends. Yeah, like you realize you meet so many lifelong friends, going through that, or even creating stuff like Marie. Like Marie with my podcast, when we started, like she's one of my best friends, and I knew of Marie because she worked in digital marketing, and I was actually friends with one of her friends, and her and I just went out and hung out one night and became like Insta friends.
That's closer. Awesome.
And now I'm like, I would never give up doing art with a friend. Like she
seems very cool. She seems like she's a very cool person.
Yeah, she's good heart, good person, and like super open-minded. And also like, again, doing art with your friends is just awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. My friend last year that I had the business with, she's going to be on later. Actually, she's one of the mediums that's going to be on my ladies' night at 8:30.
Oh, nice.
She's a medium, and we never met. We met on some like community, some like moon sisterhood community, and we're both witches, so like we kind of like I think she posted like some tarot stuff. And I was in Alaska and she was in California. I was like, oh my God, it looks so sunny there. And it was kind of the end of winter where I'm waiting for like the sun to come back in Alaska, and you get a little stir crazy. And it's like, oh my God, it looks so nice there and sunny. And then we just started talking like in that feed, and then it went to the, DMs, and then we exchanged numbers. And years later, she's like, we should start a business together. And, we kind of, I think that was kind of like our primer to kind of like get our confidence to move on to our specialties or things that we're really passionate about, like the UFO thing for me. Like me and my grandma used to nerd out over it. And then, she's a criminology major. So, but she's also a medium. So it's like we had the thing together and we kind of veered off, and it was confusing at first. But then now like I see it, like the big picture comes through. Like we were supposed to start together and then grow apart in a good way. So I think that, but we never met in person until last year. We finally met in person, and we did this like haunted house, like a legitimate haunted plantation thing. So that was super cool to do with her, and we did like our photo shoot. But we never met, and people always thought that was weird. They're like, you're trusting this person with your money, and you guys started this business together, but you've never seen her or met her. I was like, well, we FaceTime a lot. Like this is the new reality, like if people can meet on like a app and hook up, I can meet a friend. This is like a pen pal, like it's a pen pal thing, like from way back in the day. I don't know if anybody knows about those anymore, but it's no different.
I agree. It's no different at all. There's tons of people that work together that have never met each other and are doing shows together and making money and doing tons of things. Like gamers have done it for years.
Oh yeah, definitely
do it. Like I agree. And to me, I know like everyone I've ever met in the UFO community that I've met in real life now. I'm just like, they've stayed a friend or I've just been close. And to me, like, I don't know. I also I want to meet them in real life. It's important to me to meet
Absolutely.
people in real life. I'm like,
I
but
feel like I would hug everybody, even though I never met them. Like,
yeah.
I'm not
Well,
really a
wait,
hugger,
when
but
yeah, like when we all
oh, we lost your audio again. Oh man.
there we go. It keeps muting itself.
Yeah, that's so
It's
crazy.
technology.
Yeah. Well, yes. So we're
See
kind
what's
of like a little
happening
bit over the hour. Do you want to tell people you have any closing thoughts? Oh, wait, did it mute you again? StreamYard,
I
man.
can't hear you. Hold on.
You can't hear me now? Can you
It
hear me now?
decided to quit on me. Hold on.
All right. Well, maybe it's our time. So you can find, I think that we should probably, let's try. Can you hear now? No? Okay. Well, we'll close it up then. Yes, thank you everybody for joining. You can find Chrissy as Ms. Vocab on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can find her podcast, I'll Pop Repeat, on every platform. So thank you so much for Chrissy. Thanks for everybody watching, and hopefully we get to talk
There
again
we
soon.
go.
Oh, now you're back. Okay. Well, do you have any closing
awesome.
thoughts?
Sorry,
I was just
it's
telling
back.
them where
I
to find
know.
you.
Finally hear you.
Oh, it's
The
so
sound
weird.
came
It's
back,
just,
but
it's
yes,
weird sometimes on StreamYard. Well, I will be having
technology.
UAP Ladies Night later with Artemis and some other, I have 2 mediums coming on. We're going to kick off October with some paranormal stuff. So I think it'll be fun to talk, spirit realm. It's that time of year. We need to talk about it because people are probably seeing ghosts everywhere and they don't know why. But it's the time of year for that. So thank you again, Chrissy, for coming on. Do you have any closing things you want to say?
No, just thanks for having me. And just nice to be one of your first guests. And I was glad we got time to chat too.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I will see everybody hopefully in a few hours. All right.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for watching.